Hello sim racers and welcome. I'm Aris.Drives from Kuno Simulazioni, and tonight we are live streaming on how to balance the tire wear. And tonight I want to get back to do some theory live stream, and I want to talk to you about how to balance out tire wear during a race stint, which is something that I often see many people having issues. It is because we have arrived up to a point that simulators are so advanced that you simulate everything, and obviously the tires are not prescripted things anymore. They are dynamic, and depending on what truck you are driving, what car you are driving, what is your driving style and what is your setup, the tires will get worn differently back and forth. And that, obviously, going ahead with a long stint is going to influence quite a bit the balance of the car. So tonight I want to talk about the situation, see what we can do, if we can do something to improve the problem or even cure it if it's possible. Let's go in-game. Tonight I would like to get something a bit of an extreme situation. I will get the Lamborghini, which is one of those cars that it is very heavy because of the BOP. Many people say, oh, the BMW is so heavy or the Bentley is so heavy. In reality, the BOP equalizes all the cars in similar weights. So obviously, the BOP also gives more and more ballast, more weight to the cars that they are successful. And we arrive at a point that we have some of the cars that in theory should be lighter, like the Lamborghini, and they are one of the heaviest cars in the game, while maybe you see the Bentley that is so big, but in reality it's lighter. And by lighter I don't even mean that just by 5 kilos or 10 kilos, but sometimes even by 20, 30 or even 50 kilos sometimes, depending on the circuit and the series. So Lamborghini, the Huracan, is a very, very heavy car for the series because it has tons and tons of ballast, usually up to 90 or 100 kilos of ballast. And it's all at the rear of the car. It's a very rear weight bias. And as such, it tends to consume quite a bit the rear tires. And if you consume the rear tires more than the front, then obviously the balance of the car, the handling of the car will change as you keep on racing during a long stint. I think we're going to do a couple of laps at Brands Hatch, mainly because it is it has a lot of fast turns, right-hand turns. It's a very clockwise track, very little number of turns to the left, which means that you keep on consuming your left tires. And at the same time, it is also a track that you can lap in a pretty much low lap time, 1 minute 25s, on the race, 1 minute 24s, which means that we can do, a couple of laps without wasting too much time. It would be probably easier. I mean, it would have been probably better to go to a track like Suzuka. Suzuka, we know that it has a very aggressive asphalt, very abrasive, and it consumes the tires a lot. It also consumes the tires in an equal way, left and right, so you can see very nicely what is happening back and forth without having issues left and right. But every lap is over 2 minutes, and you need an eternity, and you might do mistakes, so it's not easy if you do a mistake to redo the other set. So for tonight we're gonna try, I think, Brands Hatch with a Lamborghini. Okay, so let's get in. It's typical, so it's midday, hot weather, Brands Hatch. Let's go in. Asks, do tires wear more on higher grip tracks? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It depends on the amount of abrasiveness, of how aggressive the asphalt is to the tires, because you have different type of asphalts. It depends also on the curbs. So if you go over the curbs, they get worn differently, and different curbs wear the tires differently. So it's not just, okay, a track with more grip wears down the tires more. No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Actually, it could even be the opposite, because if you have a truck with less grip, like Suzuka, for example, the tire slides around more, and by sliding, and if also the asphalt has, you know, a surface that is very, very abrasive and very bumpy, then it really worns out the tire much more than, say, a surface that it is, a truck that has a surface that is very grippy but also very smooth. First things first, as usual, we're gonna get the aggressive setup and do some laps, all right? Now, normally, I advise you to do this kind of work after you have already a decent setup, okay, that you feel relatively comfortable with, and you can do at least 4 or 5 laps with consistency. I'm not advise you to do this, you know, while you are on the top of your performance. You can do it, but it's probably better to, okay, as soon as you have some consistency on the track and you feel safe with the setup, start working, you know, on the tire wear and see what is the situation. Because of course you're going to improve your driving, of course you're going to improve the setup, but at least you're going to start having an idea of, okay, what is going to happen with the car after 10 minutes, after 20 minutes, after, you know, 60 minutes of stint. So don't wait too much to do this. All right, let's go. So aggressive setup, it's decent for this truck and car here. So I will try to do 4 laps in the aggressive setup, and see what is going to be our tire wear once we've done. All right? Okay, let's go. So excuse me if I won't be very consistent. I hope to be better. We'll see. So first, 4 laps. Just 4 laps, pushing. And let's see what we're going to do. So now I will ask you a little bit of patience as we do at least 4 laps, and it is important to do at least 4 laps. Now, it's 4 laps that it is important to do in a consistent pace, let's say. It's not important if you, you know, if you go out and your lap is not valid or whatever. It doesn't matter, just keep on lapping. We do not care really about the lap times right now. We do not care really about, you know, track limits. What we care right now is to do and finish those 4 laps. You know, the graphics might show sometimes a little bit of, you know. Okay, so 4 laps. Let's stop here. Hey Marcelo, welcome. So let's go back to the garage. So we did 4 laps. Okay, all were pretty much around 24 highs. Okay, so what we want to have a look now? Well, the pressures were not bad. So let's go directly and have a look on the tire wear. So as you know, first of all, the tire wear that we show in Assetto Corsa, differently from all our older simulators that we did, and also, you know, other simulators of the market, you know, old simulators were showing a tire wear in terms of percentage, for example. So you have a 100%, and then you had the tire arriving at, I don't know, 70% of wear or something like that. In the Assetto Corsa Competizione, instead, we are measuring the actual millimeters of tire tread that there is, and this is the actual official data that Pirelli gave us. So practically, I don't know if you have ever seen, but tires, slick tires, have across the surface, they have very small dots. Okay, so you rotate the tire, and at some point you see those series of 3 dots, usually outer, mid, and in. Those very small holes, they are actually holes, and you can put a probe in it, and they go down to 3 millimeters. And those 3 millimeters is actually the depth of the tire tread that you can use during a stint of a tire. So this is what we are showing in Assetto Corsa. So when you see here in wear 333, that means that the tire is new, and if you stick the probe on the holes, you get a 3 millimeters depth of tire tread. As the tire gets consumed on the surface, you stick obviously the probe, and the surface, because it has been consumed, it goes closer to the bottom of the hole, and so it gives you a lower number. So in this case, we did 3 laps, all right? Sorry, 4 laps, and this is the result, actually. So the result is, and I'm going to get the inner side of the tire. It's good to see what is happening also on the outside of the tire and in the middle, but for this thing, I'm gonna, for this explanation, I'm going to get the inner side of the tire here. Let me also check that you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. And as you can see here, let me check if everything works. Yes. So at the front, the inner tire has arrived at 2.87 millimeters of depth. Okay. While at the rear, it has arrived to 2.83 millimeters of depth. To make it clear for you, it means that we start with 3 millimeters, and at the front, we now have 2.87, all right? Which means that we consumed 0.13 millimeters of tire surface. That's it, mainly. We consumed 0.13 millimeters of tire surface. This happens at the front. At the rear, all right, we did 3 minus 2.83, we consume 0.17 millimeters of tire surface. That means that already we see that just by 4 laps, we have consumed significantly more the rear tires than the front. Okay. Now let me show you how actually this works in terms of, you know, tire grip. Okay. Here we go. All right. So this is a graph of what is going on with, with the tires in Assetto Corsa Competizione, but also obviously with the actual real tires of Pirelli. Okay. Now, I'm showing you practically both the front and the rear. Let me just eliminate one of those, just to be... Okay, so let's say, and we don't want the other eclipse like that, actually, like this. All right, so this point here is to show you where we are at the tire. So what is happening initially, okay, and you can see it here at the start, is that the grip of the tire, when we have the 3 millimeters, so the tire is completely new. Okay, the tire is completely new. The grip of the tire is a little bit lower than perfect, because the tire is so new. It has the patina on top of it. It's a little bit slidey. It's not yet run. It's not a tire that has done a couple of kilometers. Thank you, Paolo and Ivan, for joining. So what is happening is that you start from the pits, completely new tire, and for some meters, kilometers, okay, it doesn't take a lot, usually 1 lap, 2 laps, depending on the circuit, 1 to 2 laps, depending on the circuit. So for the first lap, let's say for the first lap, the tire gradually scrubs the initial surface, that is a protective film and everything, and gets up to perfect grip, like that. This is the so-called, as we say, qualifying grip. So after a lap, you are up to the qualifying grip. At that point, the tire gives you 100% of the grip that can give you. Okay, it's in perfect conditions. Now, you keep on doing laps, 1 lap, 2 laps, 3 laps, and at some point, all right, the tires step off, and we say step off the qualifying grip because actually, as you can see, and this graph here is not made by by luck. It's relatively accurate. What is happening as you move along and consuming the tire, at some point, the tire goes down in grip in a relatively significant way. And by significant way, I don't mean that instantly you start to sliding around, but you do understand, and you also see it on the lap times, when the tire is on the top of the performance on the qualifying first 3 laps, about 3 laps that it needs, maybe 4, depending on the track. And then after those 3 laps, it steps down and goes into a more stable grip that goes on for a lot of time during the whole stint of the race. So that is why we say that the tire steps down from the qualifying grip. It makes a big step in performance down and then remains relatively, I mean, it still loses a little bit of performance, but as you lose grip from the tire, the car also becomes lighter, and those two things practically equalize each other. And even if you feel a little bit the tire sliding around, you're still doing the same lap times as usual from almost the start of your stint towards the end of the stint. Your lap times stay pretty much identical. Yes, this is a distance grip chart. This is a distance grip chart, RDZ. Also, another very nice question. Mr. Lucas says, does the tire consumption affect the diameter of the tire itself in the simulator? Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. When we say that you have 3 millimeters of tire, all right, and you lose 2 millimeters at the end of the stint, it means that your car will go down lower by 1 millimeter, because obviously you lose 2 millimeters, one up, and it's circular, so one up and one down. It goes down, so the whole car lowers by 1 millimeter. And that's obviously, we know how those cars are extremely sensitive in aerodynamics, which means that it will influence your aerodynamics as the tire gets, more and more consumed. So always keep that in mind. Okay, so is this clear enough? So is it clear that, sorry again, is it clear that the tire goes up to a maximum grip, and after 4 laps, 5 laps, 3 laps, depending on the track, okay, it steps down from the optimum grip, and it is a significant difference in performance, and then remains, I mean, it loses performance, but it loses in a very gradual way all along for 60 minutes, which is a long race stint. Marble, yes, as well. Of course, it means that on all gears, worn out tire will be shorter gear ratio because it is smaller, and on new tires it will be longer gear ratio. Obviously, we're talking about 1 millimeter, so it doesn't mean that you're gonna gain kilometers per hour in difference. Okay, so why we're talking about all that and why this is important? As I was saying, here's something that you need to know. At around 2.9 millimeters of depth, 2.86, 2.88, 2.9, somewhere around there. There are other factors too. But somewhere around there, this is where the tires are losing their qualifying grip. Okay. Now, what that means? It means that in this situation here, we have the front tire, which is almost still on qualifying grip. You can see that we consumed in 4 laps 2.87 at the front. This is the remaining tire, okay. While at the rear, we are at 2.83, which means if we go back to our graph here, okay. Let me show you. So let's say we have the green tire is the front tire, okay, and the blue dot is the rear tire, okay. Great. Now, that means that after 4 laps, we are in this situation here. So we are into this situation here. So as you can see, while we both started with all 4 tires with the same grip. So usually, you know, sim racers, what they do, they can do infinite laps, they don't care. So they start from the pits, they do 3-4 laps, setup is so-so, okay, back to the pits, 3-4 laps, change a little bit the setup, 3-4 laps, change a bit the setup, and so on, right? But if you're doing 3-4 laps, you are always remaining somewhere around the maximum grip of all the 4 tires into this situation here, okay? But if you are going into the race after the 4th lap, so you go into the 5th lap, the 6th lap, and so on, you will find your tires to have the front tires on almost maximum grip, while the rear tires are already under the step. They have stepped off the qualifying grip. And that means that instantly you find yourself with perfect grip at the front and less grip at the rear. And this is why so many sim racers are complaining in Assetto Corsa Competizione that after a couple of laps, my car becomes undrivable and I spin or I have issues and I know how to cure it and what is happening. This is what is happening. What is happening is that after 4 or 5 laps, you have your front tires that are, you know, on a good grip, and then you have your rear tires that are under the qualifying grip, and so you have an imbalance in grip back and forth. Especially with a rear heavy car, this means that your rear end is going to be more and more unbalanced and very difficult to catch, and you're going to get more and more oversteer, especially turning in. Turning in, you have maximum grip because the front end is well loaded, so you're turning the turn, maximum grip at the front, the rear end goes lighter, the rear end raises, so even the aerodynamic balance moves to the front, but you don't have support from the tires because the tires are already consumed, and you have this imbalance in mechanical grip, and this makes all things worse and worse and worse. Somehow, you know, with a little bit of experience and so on, people survive, you know, the drivers survive the situation, and they arrive into these conditions at some point. Okay, now, as you can see from the dots, both front and rear are over the maximum qualifying grip. Both front and rear are now, I don't know, we are at, for example, at the 10th lap or the 20th lap, and as such, both tires on the front and the rear axis, they are on the race grip. Okay, you can see still that the rear tires have a little bit less grip than the front, but the difference is not that big. The difference in grip is not that big. You are losing very little difference once you are with both the tires over that qualifying grip. The qualifying grip is a big difference, and then you go down, and then, you know, both tires keep on consuming their surface, but the difference in grip between them is not that much anymore. So this is the trick. This is why once you go away from those 5-6 terrible initial laps where you think that the car is completely destroyed, then, you know, you manage to survive. What is the average lifetime of the tires before 1.5? Again, it depends a lot on the track, the car, and the driving style, of course. Easily 1 hour, very easily 1 hour, possibly 1:30 with a bit of attention. On some tracks you could even do 2 hours with the tires at 1.5, 1.4 millimeters. So the main thing right now, as you can understand, is that we have a big step in tire performance that occurs at around from the 3rd to the 6th lap of a race. So if you want to have a well-balanced car, it means that you will be forced to sacrifice a little bit of the balance of the car for the initial 4 laps. Okay, good. Okay, so how can we do that? How can we, because right now we are into this situation, right? So right now we are into this situation here where we have this kind of consumption on the front tires and much higher consumption at the rear tires. All right, so how can we improve the tire consumption of this rear left tire in this truck with this car, right? So how can we do it? How can we get better? How can we consume less? Well, first of all, there is practically 3 things that you need to keep in mind. Number one is that nothing substitutes driving style. Nothing. I mean, you can do whatever you want with setups, with telemetry, with whatever. The changes are going to be minimal. You are going to have really minimal changes in tire wear. It's the driving style that changes what is happening to the tires, all right? So slide less, drive in a way that, I don't know, maybe accelerate more straight, whatever. We are not going to touch this tonight, so we will try and talk only about setup changes. But it is important to understand that if you are not consistent on your driving, then you might do this kind of tests and you might have completely different results from one session to another just because you weren't consistent, so you changed a little bit your driving style. Okay, so keep in mind that. The driving style is what changes a lot. The driving style can also do another thing that I would like to show you. Now, one guy on the chat, I don't remember his name, sorry about that, but he asked me our driving style or how we approach the first lap of the race with the car. Is it going to change how the tires are going to, wear for the rest of the race? Absolutely yes, because as you see, we did 4 laps and we were pushing the car, okay? So because we were pushing the car, we arrived at a situation where the distance in tire consumption between the front and the rear, okay, was something like that, okay? And it was important, all right? So the front was up there and the rear was up there. And that was only in 4 laps, only in 4 laps. Now, if you could do those initial 3 laps, just 3 laps, initial 3 laps, in a way to protect your tires, so try to not, push so much, try to not, exaggerate sliding, stuff like that, be as smooth as possible, okay? You could arrive after 4 laps in a condition that is something like this, okay? So as you can see, the front and the rear tire wear would be closer, and this is what we're trying to do always, to have the front and the rear tire wear get closer, okay? If you manage to do that for the 3 laps, it means that on the 4th lap or on the 5th lap, okay, you are going to find yourself into this condition here, and that means that you have no problems anymore. The car will maintain its balance, and that's important. So yes, your driving style at the initial laps is extremely important on what is going to happen after those initial laps. Okay, you push too much, you're gonna have balance issues after 3 or 4 laps. Then you're gonna get some balance back after, I don't know, 7 or 8 laps, but you're gonna have issues on that range of laps. You don't push too much on the initial 3 laps, then you have the opportunity to have the whole rest of the stint with a much more balanced car. So keep in mind that. So driving style is very important to deal with this thing here. So you say, okay, Aris, fresh tire is 3 millimeters. We did 4 laps. We consumed 0.13 millimeters. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that we did 4 laps. And a 60 minutes stint race in Brands Hatch, I can tell you because I did the math before, it's 40 laps. In 60 minutes, which is a typical stint for the tires and for the driver, obligatory, by the way, by the rules, it's around 40 laps, 41, 42, 40 laps. So that means that, let's get back to our where it's calculator, all right? So that means that in 4 laps, we did 0.13 millimeters of consumption, tire consumption, okay? 0.13 millimeters of tire consumption in 4 laps. In 40 laps, that means 10 times more, okay? More or less, things will happen, but it's a good rule of thumb. 10 times more, which means that multiplied by 10, we're gonna consume the front tires by 1.3 millimeters. Okay, 1.3 millimeters. The same thing at the rear, we consumed 0.17 multiplied by 10, 1.7. That's a big difference. That's almost 0.5 of a millimeter in tire wear difference. So you can understand that if this is the situation, okay, it means that at the end of your racing stint, you're going to have a big difference of grip at the front and at the rear of the car. Okay. That big grip, difference of grip, if you haven't taken it into account, it's going to completely alter the balance of the car and you're going to have issues. Or if you have been meticulous about it, it might even improve the balance of your car and be faster. Okay. So you can see that even minimal differences here at this initial test we're doing in just 4 laps, it becomes multiplied by 10 at the end of a stint. It's not just, it's not double, it's not triple, it's 10 times more. It's 10 times more. So it's a big deal if you can improve just by 0.01 millimeter in the tire wear in these 4 laps tests. All right? We talk about that. Number one thing is driving style. We explained about that. Even take it a little bit easier at the start improves a lot. Cool. Number 2, why do you want to improve the tire wear? Every time people ask me, oh, I have the rear tire wear, it's getting worse and worse and worse, and how can I improve it? Well, it's difficult to improve something that you ask always performance from, I mean, you have a rear wheel drive car, you have lots of weight at the rear, you want the car to slide a little bit because you want to do, you want to make the turns better. So why think always in a one-way kind of way, So why do you want to improve the rear tire wear? It's not much you can do. You can do something. We will see this later. But number 2, think opposite. So number 1, driver's stint. Number 2, think opposite. Don't try to improve the rear tire wear. Try to make worse the front tire wear. Because what is happening here is that the front tire wear is simply not enough because there is not enough weight, there is not enough grip, there is not enough force to consume the front tire wear. And paradoxically enough, it's easier to make the tires worn more, to make the tires work harder, than it is to save them. When you save the tire from consumption, it means that you're going to lose some of the performance, right? When you are asking a tire to get consumed even more, it means that probably it will give you even more performance, or at least you are not asking for less performance, which is a very good thing in our case, because we want to go faster. We want to not lose performance, but have a better tire wear balanced out car. So if you know that by the end of the race, you're going to have at the rear 1.7 millimeters of tire wear, it means that, let's do the simple arithmetics, so 3 millimeters minus 1.7, you will arrive with 1.3. Very particular track, but 1.3 is at the limit, but it's possible, okay? So why ask from the rear less performance and instead make it in a way that the front, instead of arriving at we said 1.7 1.3. Instead of arrive at 1.7, it could arrive at 1.5 or 1.4. If the front arrives at 1.4 consumption, that means that the front and the rear will still be pretty much balanced because they will be in similar consumption levels. So we want performance. Instead of trying to save the rear tire wear, let's ask more from the front tires and make them consume down. The performance hopefully will be the same and the car will remain balanced. Yeah, Andimon is extremely right this time. Andimon says, I paid for the whole tire, I'm going to use the whole tire. Absolutely yes. Cool, so we said, number one, driving style. Number two, let's consume the healthier tire even more. That's what we're going to do to go and try and see. Okay, so how can we do that? Well, we have a very easy setup parameter that can help us quite a bit, and that is toe. Okay, let's show you a little bit what we mean by toe and how we can make this happen. So, as you know, we use a lot of camber with the tires. We have talked about this. On the straight, the tires obviously touch the ground only with the inner side because we use the camber, but on the turns, the tires flex, the sidewalls flex, and we have the biggest footprint of the tire possible. So that is why we're using a lot of camber. Now, this is interesting for us if we want to consume more, because it means that during the straights, right, just the inner side and some of the middle side of the tire touches the road. Okay. So this means that if we are going to have a look at the tires from above, I'm exaggerating, if we want to keep a little bit of toe, usually at the front we do toe in or toe out, usually we do toe out at the front, so we are in a situation like this, okay, watching the tires from the top. The tires are into this configuration when we are going straight. Okay. Now this is very handy because obviously we have talked about this and it makes our steering wheel even and our turning even faster, but it also consumes the tires, and especially consumes the tires on the inner side, which touches when we are traveling at the front. It will also provoke and create some rolling resistance extra, and that will lose us a couple of, a little bit of speed, but we are talking about, you know, at max, I don't know, 1 kilometer per hour, maybe in tracks with, you know, short straight lines, not even that. So if we add toe into the front tires, we are going to drag them more, okay? Even on the straights, which usually on the straights the tires are not consumed by much. But by adding toe, and because we also have a lot of camber, we are going to consume them in a considerable way. And that means that the more toe we add, the more we consume them. Vice versa, if we go and eliminate as much toe as possible, all right, and we have the tires straight while we are, you know, going into a straight line, we will consume the tires as little as possible. So let's do that and see what is going to happen. So what I want to go and do here is, obviously I'm going to put new tires, again 3 millimeters. Let's go back into the game. And this time I am going to exaggerate a little bit the toe at the front. Oops, sorry, something negative, something like 0.25. It's not really that much. Teams use even more than that often. So negative in this situation, 0.25 degrees is not that much. At the same time, I would like to put the rear toe as low as possible. So I'm going to go down to something like 0.5 at the rear. you could go to 0, but you need a little bit of stability at the rear end. And, you know, it's good to have a little bit of positive toe at the rear to have some stability. You can exaggerate it. I mean, in the end, another thing you can do is lower a little bit the camber. So try to, oops, sorry about that. Try to not go to as full as possible negative camber. Go a little bit lower, -3 degrees, -3.2 degrees, and try it like this. So we are not going to do anything else. We are going to try like this and see what are the differences in tire wear. All right. Again, we are trying to gain even 0.01 millimeter of tire wear. Even 0.01 is enough, because remember, 0.01 at the end of the stint is multiplied by 10. It's tenfold more. So 0.01 is going to become 0.10. So that's a big difference, okay? Okay, so let's go for another 4 laps, right? And see, well, first of all, we have to check and see, okay, what is going to happen with the balance of the car. Probably we might get a little bit more slidey rear end, more oversteer. We'll see. If that is the case, we're gonna change other things on the setup to, you know, accustomate and rebalance the car out. All right, let's go. V10 intensifies. Oh, a little bit oversteery. So this is something that we need to take care of, because the car has become more oversteery. I'm reading the chat way too much again. Okay, we did the 4 laps again. As I told you again, this is not about being fast or, you know, taking care of the track limits or whatever. You just have to do the laps consistently. And don't stop, just do the 4 laps. At the end of the 4 laps, exit and check the results. So let's go back now. Okay, so back to the garage. Let's have a look. I'm not sure if I did 4 laps or 5 laps, but doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. What we are trying to check now is the difference between front and rear. Okay, not the difference in consumption between the first set of the tires and the second set. We don't care about that. We care exclusively for the difference between the front axis of tires and the rear axis. So let's go here. And ooh, hoo la la, that is interesting. Look at this. So, guys, this is very nice. So with the first stint that we did, we had a 2.87 wear at the front and 2.83 at the rear. It's 0.05 millimeters of difference between the front and the rear. Okay? Now, at the second stint, the second tire set that we used, possibly I didn't went so fast, or maybe I did a lap less, doesn't matter. But the important thing is, it's not that much that we consumed less, because possibly we did less laps. But the important thing is that we did 2.90 at the front and 2.88 at the rear, which means that the difference between the front and the rear tire is just 0.02 millimeters. So from 0.05, we ended up with a difference of 0.02. It works. It works. So we did the 3 things here. We did driving style, not too much. We made the front tires, we tried to make them work more. Okay, so we did a couple of changes on the on the toe to make the front tires consumption get higher. And at the same time, we did a couple of changes at the toe at the rear and the camber at the rear to make the rear tires consumption a little bit less. The end result is that we ended up with much less difference from the front to the rear. Now, the setup is a little bit too much oversteery, so this is easily fixed. We can go at the arrow and maybe lower by 2 the rear right gate. Another very interesting thing that you can do to make the rear tires consumption less, especially on tracks like this that you keep on turning towards one side, okay? Not on tracks like Suzuka, for example, where the turns left and right are the same number. And you will see at a track like Suzuka that the consumption left and right is similar. In a track like Barcelona or Brands Hatch, for example, you can see that the left tires get consumed way much more than the right tires, okay? You can see that the right tires over here, the consumption is much less than on the left tires. So in tracks like this, it helps to lower the preload of the differential. Now, why is that? Why do you want a more open differential? When you have a very locked differential, so high preload numbers, the differential is locked. The moment you go on the accelerator, obviously, it's the inner tire is going to slip. Okay, so it starts to slide, it starts to slip. Because the differential is so closed and so locked, it's going to try to slide also the external tire, which means that the more you stay on the accelerator, the more you're going to slip both tires, and obviously, especially the outside tire, it's going to get more and more and more consumption, right? But if you lower the preload, something like 50, that means that before locking, the differential will let the inner wheel to slide a little bit more, dissipate some power, okay, and then it will engage also the outside tire. That means that the outside tire is going to slide less, it's going to slip less. Less slip, less slide, less tire consumption. So an upper differential in this kind of tracks, okay, with where you have to accelerate in many turns into one side, it will help the outside tire to get less consumption. So that's one thing. We did the toe. We lower a little bit the aero, and we can do something else. We can ask from the front tires to work harder. And how do you ask from the front tires to work even harder except from the slip? Well, you can overheat them a little bit. So if you are in an extreme condition, again, we're talking about extreme conditions here, right? So hello, Hilmi, Jonathan, and Sepega. Hello, guys. Thank you for the follow. So if you are in an extreme situation, extreme car, extreme circuit, you really want to balance out your car, right? So what are you going to do? You could overheat a little bit the front tire. An overheated tire in the same identical conditions, so same slip, same grip conditions, same performance, same driving style, the overheated tire is going to get consumed, is going to wear down faster than the same identical tire in the same identical conditions, but not overheated. So the heat also accelerates the consumption of the tire, right? So how are you going to do that? Well, one less brake duct at the front. And I will leave the rear brake ducts as there are. Again, we are not here trying to make the perfect setup. I'm just trying to exaggerate some setup choices to let you understand how you can balance out the tire consumption. Okay, so let's try this. Okay. Car starts to become more neutral right now. Temperatures are rising. No, pressures are always number one thing. First pressures, then a decent setup, then consistency, then you start working on this. Hey Tiago, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate it, thank you. You can see right now how actually the front left tire starts to overheat a little bit and goes also up in pressure. This is good, this is exactly what we wanted. This is why the setup is always a compromise, okay? Always a compromise. Again, I am exaggerating the situations right here and the conditions in order to show you the results. You won't need as big compromises on your own setups, on your own practice laps and races. But you get an idea of what is going on. Lap time seems identical as before also. Not stated, welcome, mate.
Well done, mate. That's not fastest lap.
And Bina, welcome. And Frank. And Try. So many people, thank you guys. Welcome to the channel, remember to subscribe, hit the like, join our Discord server, all those very nice things. Have some fun together. Alright, 13 laps, I think we did 4 laps again. So let's go back and have a look what we did. Here we are. Well, we did even more laps than before. 2.9, 2.88, so it works. It works. Again, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but now this is, I mean, let's do the math, right? Anthony asked, when the tires are light green, as they were now that I was driving, do they already wear faster? Or what you meant was with even more heat? No. I mean, if they are light heat, if they are light green, or they're going towards the yellow a little bit, it means they have more heat on them. More heat, more consumptions. That is not because that's a simulator, that's a set of competition. No, that is number one rule of the universe. More heat, more consumption. It's always like that. More heat, less efficiency. It's like that. So let's do the math, right? So let's do the math. So practically, after 40 laps, okay, we saw that we have now 0.1. Okay, so after 40 laps, that will be multiplied by 10, which means that the 3 millimeters, what is this? Sorry about that stupid things from Unreal here, sorry. So that means that after 1 hour stint, 40 laps, the front tires will be at exactly 2 millimeters of tire tread left. So 1 millimeter consumption, 2 millimeters left, okay? The rear tires are going to be, sorry, so the rear tires are going to be 0.12, right, yeah, multiplied 10, 1.2. So there you have it. You're gonna have, after a full stint, the front tires will be at 2 millimeters and the rear tires will be at 1.8 millimeters. It's more than acceptable. It's perfect. It's fantastic. So that's it mainly. That's all you have to do. So let's go back and reiterate what you really need to do. So number one, obviously, is driving style. You cannot escape that ever. And I highly recommend you to. I know you have to push. I know you have to defend, but go as smooth on the tires as possible during the initial laps. So the first 3 laps, take it easy on the tires. That doesn't mean that you really have to go slow, okay? But be even smoother than usual. Try to, don't go on the accelerator like this, but go a little bit smoother. Try not to slide the car when you are, all that small little things that they are going to really help you. And as we saw, even minimal gains at the initial 3 laps pay dividends later on after 60 minutes of race stint. So number one, driving style. Number two, don't try to improve the tire that gets the more consumption. Try to ask more from the tire that gets less consumption. So in that case, with this car, we have the rear tires that, they are getting consumed quite a bit. You can improve them, and, we saw how you can do that, but try to ask more work, ask the front tires to do more work so that they get more consumed out. And you can do that with the toe. You can do that with with overheating them. You can do that with stiffer mechanical grip. So everything stiffer, it will make the tires work harder, and that means they're going to get consumed even more. So all that stuff. And number three, try to make the tires to get consumed less. So the rear tires, how do we consume the rear tire less? As less toe as possible, less negative camber as possible, more open preload on the differential, more stable rear end so that you don't slide too much with the rear end, all that stuff. If you also manage to give a tiny little bit of understeer for the initial laps, you will see that after 5 or 6 laps the car will be more neutral than before. So you're gonna be able to do a longer stint, 40 minutes of stint with a neutral car, which is very important. Now, last thing, also that's a little bit of a trick. Real teams do it. It's not happening very often in simulation because usually, sim drivers use infinite amount of tires. But if you are participating into a league that has a set rule for limited amount of tires, then one of the things that you could use is that you could use one tire set to do just 3 or 4 laps for the qualifying. Make sure then to go ahead and do 5 or 6 laps with this tire set. That means that then you can use that tire set on the race and start instantly for an already balanced condition of the tire, both in front and the rear, which will continue for the entire stint, so that you know that you're going to have the whole stint of the car in perfect balanced condition. And this is something you can do maybe in a smaller stint. Sometimes you have many stints, it's a longer endurance race, and on one of those last stints you don't have to do a full 60 minutes, you have to do 40 minutes. This is the perfect occasion to use one of those already used tires They're still fresh, but they're over the qualifying grip, and you can use them to have a very stable and balanced car for the whole stint of 40 minutes, for example. Okay, so yeah, so I think that's it for tonight, guys. Things are similar to any car you're going to try, honestly. It doesn't really change a lot. So if you have a front-end car, probably you're going to consume faster the front tires. So what you need is less toe and possibly, if you can, a little bit less camber at the front, even though usually it's impossible because you need the lateral grip. And more toe at the rear, you know, to consume the rear wheels more and make the car more balanced out. The advantage that the front end weight, the front engine cars with front weight have, is that even if you lose grip at the front tires, the car still remains safe, because obviously it becomes more understeery, but it's safe to deal with. While in a car like the Lamborghini, the car becomes more and more and more oversteery, and that obviously is a problem to drive around. So yeah. All right, cool. So I hope, guys, that you enjoyed tonight's theory lesson, as we say. It is something that I know many people have issues with. Again, you know, make sure that your car drives well for the race. You know, it makes no sense, at least as long as we're talking, you know, about, you know, from new drivers to good drivers, from new drivers to good drivers. Aliens, Tortellini, who cares? You know, you can give him 3-wheeled cars, he would go as fast the same. But for all the rest drivers, what is important in a race? And you've seen that. I hope that you've seen that, and I hope that I was able to demonstrate to you this thing many times in my online races. If you can make 60 minutes of a stint without errors, and your lap times are consistent, this is much faster in the end, and you can gain not only lap time, but you can gain positions, okay? Instead of having a car that permits you to do some amazing lap times, but every 5 or every 10 laps, you have a oversteer moment, a scary moment, went wide moment, almost half spin or something like that. Every time, I mean, you really have to think about that. If you can gain with an extreme setup, you're gonna gain what? 0.2 of a second, half a second per lap, okay? But if every 10 laps you are losing 2 seconds because you did a mistake, then it's no use. It's no use at all. Instead, make, you know, a safe setup that you can keep on consistently driving. Maybe it is 0.2 slower, but you can consistently drive this setup without errors for 60 minutes. This is going to help you gain safety rating, consistency rating, positions on the race, I don't know, everything. Everything in life. All right, so again, thank you so much for joining, guys. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully we will turn doing also some races. And yeah, see you next time, I guess. Goodbye.